So for this deep dive, we're going to be looking at Psalm 63.
Okay.
And this is from the New Living Translation.
Right.
And it's interesting because the intro to it says a Psalm of David regarding a time when David was in the wilderness of Judah.
Oh, wow.
So right away we know we're in for some some pretty serious reflection here.
Yeah. Sounds like a challenging time.
Yeah, and what we're trying to do is really try to understand what are the core emotions here.
Yeah.
What's David really expressing, and what are some of the insights that we can gather from this, by taking a look at some excerpts from the psalm. And all the excerpts we're going to be looking at today are courtesy of YouVersion.
Okay. Sounds good. I mean, it's amazing how these ancient texts can still resonate, thousands of years later.
Absolutely.
Like, what is it about David's experience that still speaks to us today?
Well, and I think you hit on it. I mean, these are, very raw feelings.
Right.
And you kind of get a glimpse into, how somebody can find inner strength when they're facing external, difficulty.
Yeah, that's it. It's that inner resilience in the face of tough times.
Yeah. And so right away, like the very first verse, David's like, "Oh God, you are my God. I earnestly search for you. My soul thirsts for you. My whole body longs for you in this parched and weary land where there is no water." I mean, wow.
Powerful imagery there.
Yeah.
That image of thirst in a desert. It's almost visceral.
Yeah, yeah. And so like you said, it's powerful, right? And it really gives us a sense of that intense yearning and longing.
Yeah. And he's not just talking about physical thirst here, right?
Right.
He's using that physical feeling to express a deeper need, a spiritual longing.
Yeah. And so when we're talking about a parched and weary land, that can be a real place, or it can be, a metaphor for a state of being.
Absolutely. It's that sense of emptiness we feel when we're disconnected from something essential, that feeling of being lost or unfulfilled.
Exactly, yeah.
It makes you think, what are the things in our lives that we truly thirst for? What are those deep longings that we're trying to quench?
Right.
And sometimes, those longings can point us in a really important direction.
Yeah. And then he kind of shifts in verse 2. And he goes, "I have seen you in your sanctuary and gazed upon your power and glory." And so it's almost like even though he's in this, desolate wilderness, his mind's going back to a time when he was experiencing something else.
Yeah, he's drawing strength from a past experience, right? A
Yeah.
time when he felt that connection, that power and glory.
Exactly. So like, what does that tell us? I mean, how does that help us when we're facing, hardship?
It's like he's holding on to that memory, using it as an anchor. It suggests that our positive memories, those moments of clarity or connection, they can be really powerful resources when we're going through tough times.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Makes you think about how we tap into our own personal history. How do we access those memories, those experiences that have sustained us in the past? Because they can be a real source of strength.
And then in verse 3, I mean, this is a huge, a really huge statement. He says, "Your unfailing love is better than life itself. How I praise you." So like, wow.
That's a bold statement. He's saying that there's something even more valuable than life itself.
Yeah. So what is it about this unfailing love that makes it so incredibly valuable to him?
I think it points to a recognition that true fulfillment goes beyond just existing. It's about connecting to something bigger than ourselves, something that provides a sense of meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
This unfailing love, it represents something constant and secure, something that transcends our immediate circumstances.
So even when things around him are really difficult, he's clinging to this idea of this love that is bigger.
Exactly. And it prompts us to consider, what are the things we truly value when life gets challenging? What are those unwavering sources of strength and meaning that we can turn to?
Right, right. And then if we go on to verses 4 and 5, he says, "I will praise you as long as I live, lifting up my hands to you in prayer. You satisfy me more than the richest feast. I will praise you with songs of joy." I mean, it's almost like this spiritual connection isn't just a comfort to him. It's actually giving him like a profound sense of satisfaction.
Yeah, there's a real sense of joy and fulfillment in his words. And notice how he's actively engaging with his faith, right?
Yeah.
He's praising, he's praying, he's singing. It's not a passive acceptance. It's an active participation in something that brings him deep satisfaction.
And then the comparison to a feast, right? I mean, that's such a powerful image.
It is. He's saying that this spiritual nourishment is even more satisfying than the richest physical feast.
Hmm.
It suggests that our inner well-being, our sense of peace and contentment, it can be nourished in ways that go beyond just our physical needs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then, if we move on to verses 6 through 8, it's nighttime. He's reflecting, and he says, I lie awake thinking of you, meditating on you through the night. Because you are my helper, I sing for joy in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your strong right hand holds me securely.
It's like his reliance on God is continuous, even through the night.
Mhm.
The imagery of wings and the strong right hand, it evokes a sense of refuge, of being protected and supported.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, because, nighttime can be a time when, we're alone with our thoughts, and maybe things feel, scarier or more uncertain.
Exactly. It's when our vulnerabilities can feel more pronounced.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that this is when David turns to his faith for comfort and security.
And it's interesting because he says, because you are my helper. So he's really acknowledging this dependence.
Right. He's not trying to go it alone. He's recognizing that he needs help, and he's finding that help in his connection with God. It speaks to the idea that we don't always have to be strong on our own, that it's okay to rely on something bigger than ourselves for support.
And then, as we get to verses 9 through 11, things take a bit of a turn, because now he's talking about his enemies and the righteous. And he says, but those plotting to destroy me will come to ruin, but the king will rejoice in God.
There's a real sense of contrast there, a sense of justice and a belief in a specific outcome. It reflects his faith that ultimately righteousness will prevail.
Right. And so we see that, even in the midst of these really challenging circumstances, he's still holding on to that faith.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there can be a flicker of hope, a belief that things will ultimately work out for the good.
So to kind of, sum this all up, our deep dive into Psalm 63 has, taken us through David's, intense yearning for connection when he's feeling isolated. We saw how he relied on past experiences for strength. We looked at how he placed such a high value on this idea of unfailing love.
Right. And we saw how that manifested in his active expressions of devotion, his praise, his prayer, his singing.
Exactly. And we also explored those nighttime reflections, that sense of dependence and finding security in his faith.
And of course, that contrasting view of the destinies of those who are with him and those who are against him, that sense of justice and righteousness prevailing.
Right. And so ultimately what we're left with is this timeless reflection on, how do we seek solace? How do we seek strength when we find ourselves in those difficult wilderness experiences in life?
Because we all face those wildernesses at some point, right? Those moments of feeling lost, isolated, uncertain.
Exactly. And that kind of brings us to our final thought. As you think about times in your own life when you felt lost or isolated in your own personal wilderness, how might David's ancient words offer you a new way to frame or understand those moments? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.